Welcome guys to another DeckTech, and this time it's going to be Minn, Wily Illusionist. I think she is a super interesting pick from the mono blue because there's a lot of generic stuff like Thassa and stuff that does a lot and has a high power ceiling but isn't really that interesting. This one revolves around drawing 2 cards each turn, and even on your opponent's turns, to generate illusions that scales with each other illusion, and then creating pretty huge creatures. And as some of you know, I like to have weaknesses in my decks. Like, I don't want to build low power decks that handles every single situation. So I am actually going to put in some weaknesses, and in this deck, 2 of the most obvious weaknesses are Trample, because they only have 1 toughness, and First Strike for the same reason. And of course flying, but flying more generic, like most decks have trouble with flying. So yeah, and I'm also leaning a bit away from counter spells. I'm running, I think, 6, and because again, mono blue has a little bit of trouble with interaction, so I'm just trying to run a more fair deck and more interesting deck that doesn't revolve around countering every single spell. So it's not a really control deck, it's still a combat creature deck. And also, when I was finished with the deck, it turns out it's pretty much a wizard tribal on top of that, so that's pretty cool. And let's get into it. So let's start off with ramp, and you have your typical cards. You have your Soul Ring, Wayfarer's Bauble, Felwar Stone, Mind Stone, and this one doesn't really. A Heroic Banner, because it grows the creatures. That's the second ability. When a Elysian dies, you get to put a card from your hand onto the battlefield, a permanent card from your hand into the battlefield. So you kind of want them to reach about 5 or 6, because Commander Sphere and Wayfarer's Bonus Charge, sure, you can get some nice ramp pieces, but these 2 are the cards you really want. So you want your Gauntlet of Power and your Cage Sun. So these 2 are like the late game, and the stuff you really want to put down with a Dying Illusion. So you have 6 power, you get a Cage Sun, that is pretty sweet. Gauntlet of Power, of course, but like these 2 are pretty late game and doesn't really like. I don't really count them as ramp because they don't affect the game, the turns that are most important. So as you can see, 7 ramp pieces is pretty low. But again, this deck revolves around 2 and 4 mana spells, so if you can double cast, yeah, you're in a good spot. But nothing really strange or unique in this part, it's just your typical ramp package. Next up we can take Interaction. And I'm running your typical Pongify, Rapid Hybridization, Reality Shift, and I'm also including Snap here, because Snap can be both protective and offensive to bounce threats and protect my stuff as well. And on top of this, I'm running counter spells, so I'm running Wash Away. I've been pretty impressed with that one. 1 mana to counter commander will get you some salt, but yeah, again, like the bombs they put in command zone these days are insane. Bjor is a super interesting card I don't think a lot of people have seen. 1 mana counterspell, and I need to sacrifice a blue permanent, so I sacrifice an illusion to get my Cage Sundown, for example, for 1 mana. And that's a really spicy card, and it works really good in this deck. Counterspell, of course, Arcane Denial, Wizard's Retort, because again, Commander is a wizard, so it's a 2 mana counterspell. You find the Villain's Lair, great card, counterspell, and I can draw 2 and create an illusion. And Soul Raid. It's not a great card, but it draws 2. It has flexibility. I can get my 2 cards and I can actually counter a spell. So these are the counter spells I'm running. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm only running 7 counter spells. That's yeah, so 7 plus 4, so 11 pieces of interaction. I think that's fair. I think that's about what you should expect from a typical deck in EDH. Next up, we have the spells that draws you 2 cards. So you have Brainstorm, of course, great card. Words of Wisdom. Sure, I give everyone else 1 card, but for 2 mana I get to create an illusion. That is great. Perilous Research is interesting. You draw 2 and sacrifice a permanent. Again, can sacrifice an illusion to get my Cage Sun out. That's pretty spicy. Thirst for Knowledge, up to 3 mana. Drawing 3, discarding 2 unless I discard an artifact. You know, it's your typical. And of course I'm running Thirst for Discovery, and that's discarding a land, and Thirst for Meaning, discarding an enchantment. I'm not running a lot of enchantments, but again, it's 3 mana, draw 3, so I can filter my hand out a bit. Frantic Search, of course, and I'm running Pulse off the Grid. So I can draw 2 and discard 1, and if an opponent has more cards, I'll get to put it in my hand again, so that's a pretty nice recursion for a draw spell. Treasure Cruise, because I will have a lot of cards in my graveyard from the discoveries, the discarding and stuff, and Frantic Search and whatever. So most of my cards are like sacrificing and stuff. So that one is a no-brainer. So usually 1 mana, draw 3. Mnemonic Sphere is basically 4 mana, draw 2. Meeting of Minds, it's Convoke, so it's great for this deck, and the draw 2. Chemistry Insight has Jumpstart, so I can discarding lands to cast it again. Instant speed, 4 mana, draw 2. And Pull from Tomorrow. So that is 2 mana, 4 mana, draw 2. So it's not card advantage, but after 3, it's card advantage. No, that's. Yeah, so for at 5 you get card advantage. So that's a large portion of the deck. So this one is actually pretty solid. It does, yeah. I have most of the stuff I need. Some cards are pretty spicy, like Perilous Research, that I get to recast and stuff. No, Perilous Research, but sacrifice, and yeah, there's some interesting cards there that's not in your typical mono blue decks. Next up, we have the cards that consistently, these are like draw spells that draw you once. These are a few cards like Enclave Cryptologist. It's a wizard on top of being a merfolk, get a cool art, and tap to draw and discard. Usually you want this one out before your commander, so you get to create an illusion the first time your commander is in play. Same with Merfolk Looter. It's not a wizard, but it's fine. And Thought Courier is a wizard and does the thing. And Jacob Hauken. It's not a wizard, but yeah, I can flip him and he becomes like, I don't know, a free spell every turn plus whatever you have exiled under him. It's not often I flip him, but I do sometimes, and it's he has put in a lot of work. Also, that enable your commander to create a token the first time it's in is fantastic. And also like the wizard, like tap creatures, and then I have a few other. I have Wavebreaker Hippo. You know, I play a lot of them on opponent's turn, so that one will generate some cards. Teferi's Alias Insight. It's just no-brainer when I draw as much as I do. Reconnaissance Mission I've not been super impressed by that, but it's a card. I like it. It does what it's supposed to, and it has cycle, so I can actually get the trigger, getting an illusion. And Asami, Blade of the Scrolls. So she, again, as a wizard tribal sort of deck, she can just turn all my loot creatures into just simply draw spells, and yeah. That is pretty strong. I really like her a lot. She has put in a ton of work. Every time she lands, she has like changed the outcome of the game more or less. Like I'm been so far ahead after she lands. So she is fantastic. And while I'm at it, I can also take some of the more spicy spells. In this deck, you have Read of Runes. Draw X, instant, and then I have to discard or sacrifice. So I draw 6, I get to sacrifice or discard 6 cards. Sacrificing 1 or 2 illusions, maybe I get 1 from just casting it. So maybe get a Cage Sun, maybe get something spicy like Asami or something, and then yeah, I'm off to the races. great card. I've done a lot of work for this deck. Baral, again, I have a few counter spells, and that one helps me loot, but it's not really that the reason I have him. It's a wizard, and it's decreasing the casting cost of instant and sorceries. He has also put in a lot of work. Mesmeric Trance is a pretty spicy card. Ice Age, cumulative upkeep, and I get to discard and draw. So basically I can just filter out all my lands to create illusions, and that's a really spicy card once it lands. And a card that almost broke the deck before when I played Ashna's Altar in it, Maluku, the Clouded Mirror. Again, I'm returning lands to hand. If I get to sacrifice, like I had Ashna's Altar, so I just sacrificed all my lands and I got like infinite mana and infinite ETBs, and like it's so nutty. And I played what's it called? It's called I played Mystic Sanctuary. So Mystic Sanctuary plus Maluku and my commander in play will I get to play all the like if I have 2 draw spells in my graveyard, I just cycle them and then draw my deck infinite mana, infinite ETBs, put all permanents in play, and I have like some other spicy cards that makes it so I can get control of all creatures in permanently instant. I just busted, so I took out Ashen's Altar. But she is fantastic. She puts a lot of work in, and also like as a killing blow, I can just return all my lands to my hand, and then she will buff all my illusions because she creates illusions. So all my lands will be 1/1s that buffs all my illusion tokens that my commander makes. And the last card in this category is super spicy card, Illusionary Wall. So it's a 5 mana 7/4 flying first strike cumulative upkeep 1 blue. And you may be wondering like what's up, why do you put a wall in an illusion deck? And this is actually errated to be an illusion. So if I get my commander out turn 3, turn 4 I do whatever, create some tokens, turn 5 I drop this one, turn 6 I sacrifice this one, it's an illusion, trigger my commander, put a permanent card with 7 or less into play, and again, Cage Sun or Gauntlet of Power will be pretty spicy, untapping with like 15 mana, and yeah. So that one is, I've never really gotten to use it, but yeah, that one is for sure spicy. And also 7/4 in the air is, you're pretty much protected against dragons or whatever. And if they destroy it, like, you still get triggers unless they exile it. So, that's a pretty awesome include in this deck. And also, like, I like Ice Age because that's when I started playing. So, yeah, that's fun. So that's more or less like the core of the deck. I have next up some anthems, and Cage Sun and Gauntlet of Power of course buff them, but Lord of the Unreal, also Wizard, also buffing them and giving hexproof. That's never been really relevant because they have 1 toughness, they die so easily. Adaptive Automaton is pretty nice because it buffs 2 power, because itself is an illusion on top of giving all illusions +1. So that's a great card. Obelisk of Earth, Convoke, giving all the illusions +2. That's a great card. I can tap my commander because my commander is not good at blocking or attacking mid or late game. So I can, if I don't have Asomi out, I can just Convoke it out. I have some protection spells. I have Change of Plans and March of Swirling Mist. I realize now that Swirling Mist also can exile or phase out opponent's creatures. So if I have Cage Sun plus whatever, I can just phase out all the creatures and kill them that way. So that card is actually a lot better than I initially thought. And I have actually 2 bounce spells. I have Filter Out because I think that card is fantastic. Ridding of all treasures at instant speed. And Perplexing Test that does more or less the same as Swirling Mist. You can bounce all tokens or non-tokens. So that's both offensive and defensive. I mostly used it offensively. So I mostly used it as a way to bounce all my opponent's creatures, regular or normal creatures, and then swinging with my illusions and killing people. And that is the the spicy, more utility piece, like some anthems, some lords, and some mass bounce and some protections around. Yeah, that is some utility. Then we have some hard to define stuff, model phase cards. Really nice getting to look at top 6, getting a card. Murmur Mystic, again, bird illusions, creating birds when I cast my spells. Wander, to give all my illusions flying. I have a few ways to discard and loot, so that one won't be a problem. Sakashima's Will was the one with Mystic Sanctuary in Meluko. So I get to, loop Sakashima's Will and then gain control of all creatures. But now, in this deck, in this version of this deck, what I do is I cast Sakashima's Will and turn all my creatures, like Murmur and Mystic, like those illusions, turn them into the commander illusions, making like all my creatures buff all my other creatures +1, so that one is really a game ender sort of thing. Arrhenius Wild Duplication. I got the inspiration to build this deck from some content creator who played this one, and I liked this list, but felt like it was, I don't know, I wanted to make it budget, so this is a budget version as well, so I wanted to make a budget and I wanted to include some cool, interesting mono blue spells, and I kept that one in because it's really good in this deck. And Protection, Opposition, it's a bit cancerous, but Opposition is great when you have a lot of tokens, and I played against a Naya Dino deck, and that one really kept me in the game, or really made me get control of it, so that one is fantastic. And also, not only creatures, but lands and artifacts, and yeah, that's one. This is great. But that one is on notice for being a bit too boring or too horrible to play against when I have the most creatures. And lastly, I have the lands. Mystic Sanctuary, Demolition Field, because there's so many bullshit lands right now. Riptide Laboratory, Bouncing Wizards, protecting my commander. And this sort of the Mindful, Lonely Sandbar, and Remote Island as a cycling land to get my illusion on my turn, and also like if I get flooded. And Memorial to Genius, it's a sacrifice land I can draw 2. It's not great, but like these are Mystic Sanctuary is the only, and Demolition Field is the only ones I really think does anything else other than just being a utility cycle land. And I'm going with that is Zendikar, the new Zendikar. I'm going with those basics. I'm running 37, I think, lands in this deck. So, yeah. That is the lands. And there are 4 cards that's in the deck currently that I'm thinking about taking out. And the first one is Step Through. 5 mana bounce 2 or Wizard Cycling. So that's basically because I don't really like tutors, but in this deck I think it's fair, it's fine and justifiable to have it. Wizard class, I guess it's mostly flavor what I put it in, but it doesn't really do what it's supposed to, or like it doesn't really put in the value it's supposed to. Mulldrifter, more or less because it's a flavor fail. It's fine, but again, like I'd rather have something cooler. And Mind Splice Apparatus, I actually bought it for a different deck and took it out because it wasn't good enough, and it's not good enough in this deck either, so I'm thinking about taking that one out. Last time I played test this deck, I was actually running Hullbreaker Horror, but yeah, it's just not fun. It's at low power, so I think this one is a bit too brutal, so I took it out. But yeah, for sure this one would fit in a more powerful version of this deck. And then the question is, how does it play? It's a super fun deck. Like you get to draw so many cards, so you never really out of the game, and because you can create like blockers and stuff, so it's not really a bigger problem to take unnecessary damage, and you will be the threat. It's super easy to become the threat, so I don't know. It's rough, man. So you can take a lot of extra damages because like the cards you play that has value has a lot of value, and they do a lot for the deck, and people will see like you creating like 8/8s or 9/9s, like then people will start to notice you. But and they have 1 toughness, so there's like a lot of cards like Toxic Deluge for 1 or whatever is just wrecking this deck, or like Mayhem Devil, yes, with treasures will just ruin this deck. So there's a lot of cards that actually ruins this deck one before you put your lords out, and yeah, you can't really count on that. So I think this is a fantastic deck, one of my favorite decks to play right now. I'm super happy with it. I'm just gonna check my Moxfield listing and see how it looks. It is currently at 40 euros. So 40 euros 19 cents as of recording of this. So yeah, I think you cannot go wrong with building this cheap version of a super fun mono blue deck. I highly recommend it. Great deck.